What's up, everybody? Welcome to the CanesInSight Daily podcast powered by Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. We are live at the home of the Hurricanes, Duffy's Tavern, right there on the edge of Coral Gables. Got the polos on. We're rocking and rolling. Got Jose Wayne the Pain in the building, and it's another great day at Duffy's, man. How we doing?
I'm pumped up, man. Beautiful Thursday morning here in the Gables, and just excited, man. Got this bye week. It's a little bit weird, right? We've had these ups and downs with these bye weeks. You have that adrenaline rush of game week, and then we're kind of chilling, ready to watch some football this weekend. But a lot to dissect still from that game, and of course we have Steve Kim on with us today. Steve always, historically does a great job of putting things in perspective. So excited to hear his thoughts on last weekend.
Yeah, I got loaded show. Not just Steve Kim. Also, right after that, we got Lance Rofford ready to break it down. You see him on the Upon Further Review articles he does there at CanesInsight.com. 7.6 million posts and counting. So we'll get the full breakdown here. All-star team. If you need an all-star team of attorneys for your case, Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. If you're someone you care about has been injured in an accident, you could be entitled to significant compensation. Now, 1-800-747-FREE. 1-800-747-3733. Take back control of your life with Anajar and Levine. Steve, hop in here. How we doing?
I'm doing well, gentlemen. Good Thursday to you.
Great Thursday, man. And like the last time we were sitting here in Duffy's was before Notre Dame, right? So we were 0-0, 5-0. How
Before
we feeling?
Florida, I think, no?
Oh, we came back.
Yeah.
All right, we've been here a few times. We're losing track of the Duffy's experiences out here. I know you've been across the country twice just to come to Duffy's Tavern. But how are we feeling 5-0?
Well, I'm feeling great. And in about 7 or 8 days, I'll be back right where you're sitting at Duffy's Tavern coming in for the Louisville game. Guys, before we get into the FSU victory, I mean, just think about it. 7-8 weeks ago, there were national pundits that believed that Mario Cristobal in this program was going to take about 10 steps backwards in the wake of the departure of Cam Ward and pretty good amount of draft choices. And now you fast forward to the middle of October, they are now, in some circles, the #1 team in the country. I think it's really a testament to how far Mario Cristobal has brought this program.
Yeah, and let's start with we'll table the end of the game. I know you have a lot of thoughts, and I don't want to start with anything that was negative. So let's start with something positive, and you said it, just kind of how far this program has come. Steve, one thing that's interesting to me is being an offensive line-driven program. Obviously, 2001 best offensive line in the country, but you saw a lot of Canes teams that won in other ways. Maybe the defense looks familiar to what we're seeing this year, but the offense looks similar, I guess, in some ways, different in others. How does this offense, this attack on offense, compare to some of these other championship Canes teams that you've seen in the past?
It really does remind me a little bit of 2001 and 2002. The ability to run the ball, set the table with the run game, and throw off play action. And, everyone had doubts about Carson Beck. I thought he was one of the more misunderstood quarterbacks coming into this country. I mean, there were actually top 10 lists from national pundits that we all respect. They had him, literally had him 8th or 9th, which I thought was amazing. And if you go back to some of those rankings, they had him behind guys that had never really been a full-time starter or only had started for one season. And it's clear. I believe that Carson Beck has been really good at just playing to the flow of every single game. And we finally saw what he's able to do with the dry track with no moisture in the air. And his numbers actually should have been better. A couple of penalties, and I think we shut the game down in the fourth quarter offensively. But Carson Beck is a guy, and he's a jockey to this thoroughbred. We can hit the finish line with this guy.
You know who I think looks terrible, and terrible might be a strong word in all this, but Mike Bobo, man. I just –
Petey, you know who agrees?
Am I wrong?
Petey, you know who agrees with you and says you're not wrong? About 98% of the Georgia fan base. I mean, I'm not saying he's at the D'Onofrio level that Miami fans were at, or even, who was it, Patrick Nix. But if you go on Georgia message boards and you see the chatter, Mike Bobo, let's just put it this way. We know Todd Monken and Mike Bobo ain't no Todd Monken.
I don't think, Beck obviously did not enjoy playing in that offense whatsoever. And I think this just like narratives, there's a lot of negative narratives that happen in these off seasons, right? When it comes to Mario and the stuff that he's done in Miami. But I think that narrative, when it comes to quarterbacks, we talk about the rehab job. This case continues to grow and grow, Steve.
It does. And look, I actually watched a lot of Carson Beck throughout the summer. And the one thing I did notice, below average offensive line, running backs were banged up, the wide receivers that dropped over 35 passes, leading the nation. And look, this also mattered, okay? Brock Bowers is one of the greatest tight ends of the past 25 years, probably number one. Ladd McConkey looks like he's going to get 1,000-yard seasons for the next 7-8 at least. That's a lot of talent. And you had some decent athletes. You had Lovett inside the slot. Arian Smith could take the top off the defense. Problem was, he had Edward Scissorhands out there. He did not get a lot of help. And look, Gunnar Stockton is pretty serviceable at times. But in terms of what we needed as a program, Danny, you said last year, your opinion was, look, the days of developing that third-year quarterback from day one are probably over, right? So the thing with Beck was I thought there was a little bit of doubt over how much he was committed to football with that previous relationship. And I mentioned this last week. Some of the things that were going on there surrounding it, I was told actually impacted how he was viewed inside the room at Georgia. Not that he was a bad person. My view is this: a quarterback has to be the guy that's all in, first in, last out. I personally don't want quarterbacks having a lot of distractions outside of football. Not saying they don't have to be well-rounded people. They have to be football guys. And one thing that we are finding out over time, Carson Beck is a football guy.
Steve, so listen, I'm of the opinion that with Cam Ward and this defense that we have now, if you had this defense and Cam Ward, we're winning the national championship easily, at least last year with that offense, like what we know how they were the whole year. So
I will say, though, are we managing the offense the same way we are and letting the defense at times get their breathers?
Well, I think scoring 50 or 45 helps the defense.
Yeah, but I'm saying the defense probably doesn't. The defense would have been on the field more probably, and then the numbers would be a bit more skewed is what I'm saying.
Well, I guess the reason for that disclaimer is I'm not of the opinion that we could not win a championship with a quarterback like Cam Ward, who's an off-script playmaker and the combo guard on the field. I think we could have won it quite easily. I think Cam Ward's a championship quarterback 10 out of 10 times. However, what I'll say about Beck, and I'm asking you this because you saw these guys, is when you think about Kozar, Steve, not Testaverde outside this mold and didn't win, but Kozar, Steve Walsh, Craig Erickson, Ken Dorsey, really guys that made their living in the pocket, guys that were decision makers, guys that had some height to them, guys that were accurate with the ball. Again, very much on script type quarterbacks. Vinny Testaverde an exception, but Vinny Testaverde didn't win it. So do you see Carson Beck almost in the mold of that championship quarterback tradition at the University of Miami?
The comparison that I made after the Notre Dame game, after I saw him dumping into the flat a few times to Sharmar Brown, Steve Walsh. I thought Steve Walsh was probably the most in command quarterback I've seen, even beyond Kozar and Ken Dorsey. The most impressive year I've seen out of a quarterback maximizing his potential around him and the ability was Steve Walsh in 88. Because if you look at what we had in 86 and 87, we had unbelievable talent. Alonzo Highsmith, Mel Bratton, and the bomb squad, Irvin Perriman Blades. And in 88, it was kind of a question mark. We didn't know how good Cleveland Gary was as a full-time player. Leonard Conley was going to play a lot. And the wide receiver unit ended up being very good. But it was a transition to Dale Dawkins, Andre Brown, and Randall Hill. And they played this monster schedule, like 7 or 8 bowl teams, 3 or 4 that won their conference, and the eventual national championship, very tainted Notre Dame. And Steve Walsh did the greatest job of just being the consummate point guard. People say the term game manager as a pejorative. I completely disagree. Every quarterback has to manage the game. And they have to assess, what do we have outside? What's my talent? Can we run the ball? and what is the game flow, and do not screw this up. He did as good a job as anybody of understanding, even though I have a future Hall of Fame wide receiver and the playmaker and two other guys that had multiple 1,000-yard seasons at the next level, he was never really going to be able or have the freedom to throw the ball 35 times if you look at those box scores, right? Carson Beck, I think, has actually been better than his numbers suggest, given some of the variables, including the weather so far in 2025.
How about your boy Malware? Tony affecting the secondary there.
Oh, people better get that Norton. You better get, because he is affecting secondaries everywhere. And, he really is one of the people. There's so many comparisons with him. I don't think he's Santana Moss. I don't think he has, Santana was really an outside receiver. We didn't really have a slot receiver per se in the offense that he played in. People have said Xavier Restrepo. I don't think Restrepo has his outright athleticism and twitch. Some people have compared him to Kevin Williams. Kevin is not the technician or the route runner that Tony is. He's a little bit of all three. He really does have that it factor. And he reminds me a little bit of the way he operates out in the middle of the field and how smooth he is of Reggie Wayne. When you talk about the great ones that really stand out, that kid absolutely has the it factor.
Yeah, and the IQ part. I mean, I think when people go back and look at the Reggie Waynes, Andre Johnson, Santana Moss, I don't think they pay enough attention to the IQ factor that those guys have. Andre Johnson had all the tools. I mean, he was very much like what Jeremiah Smith is now, but like Jeremiah Smith, because Jeremiah Smith has this as well. And of course, Malachi has it, is the mental part with Andre, the work ethic, the IQ, all that stuff, the discipline. He has that in spades. So I think that's the biggest of all those guys. If you say what they had in common, different body types, different speed levels, etc., that's one thing you see in common. So I think when you're evaluating wide receivers, and I've been banging this drum way before Malley came on the scene, I'm going to continue to bang it now. If you're not evaluating the intangibles, the love of the game, the ability to work outside of practice at a high level, if you're not highly scrutinizing that with wide receivers, you're going to get a lot of busts, and you're going to miss on guys like this, who was a 3-star player. I mean, if you could believe.
Guys, just his ability and the IQ to sit down in a nice soft space and not fade, that is such a help for the quarterback, understanding coverage. And either you run through in man or either you sit down in zone. It's an old Bill Walsh principle, and he does it like a 10-year NFL vet. Hey, guys, cannot forget, we want to thank the Cruz family, our good friends out there. We got to talk about them. They are a family. They love the Hurricanes. And Canes fans, before you head out to Hard Rock Stadium, make sure your tailgate is loaded up with everything you need to make that an enjoyable experience at the greatest stadium in college football. Jensen Sunset Corners has you covered with all the best wine and spirit. Now, here's the thing. On game days at Hard Rock, the Asylum, the Madhouse of Miami, if you come in rocking your gear, any brand, you get 10% off that particular game day. So wear your orange and green, all non-sale items. Want to make that clear. Again, that is Jensen Sunset Corners, 8701 72nd Street, Miami, Florida.
Love it. Downtown Glenvar Heights. There it is. Canes Cat loves it. St. Jensen. Steve, let's get to it. You're a guy who, with Coker, with Butch, you always were coining terms for end-of-game situations or end-of-game management. So it's a passion of yours. This has been a very discussed end-of-game situation, fourth quarter against FSU. Fortunately, we're discussing a position of having won. And I think really most of the people nationally understand this was a blowout. Fans left. It seems more a consternation causing more consternation amongst Canes fans, because we don't want it to be a repeat situation where it causes trouble and you lose to a team that's actually good, unlike the Florida State Seminoles. So what are your thoughts on the fourth quarter of this last game?
Well, I wanted an exclamation point, and instead we got kind of a period. And I want to say one thing. I was watching this game at JB's house, and right next to me was Henry Ramirez, best known for being the trainer of former heavyweight contender Chris Arreola. And he told me at 28-3 when Daniels took that touchdown, and he said, "Steve, this game's over." And I said, "No, it's not. Guys, We must have very short memories. I remember a Super Bowl that had that same score where the team with 28 ended up losing. I'm going to date myself. In 1994, in the fourth quarter, it was 31-3 Florida over Florida State. And before the age of overtime, you know what that score ended up being at the end of the game? 31-31. Nothing is over. And I kept saying, guys, we need one more score. And I'm going to say this about Mario. If you look at him on the sidelines, he wanted to pour it on. He absolutely did. Now, one of those drives was impacted by an Elijah Lofton holding call. And given the field position and the fact it was a 25-point game, I understand going really conservative and safe. Everything else, though, as soon as they scored that first time, I said, guys, get this offense going. Here's the thing. I understand what took place. I get it. You're not going to run 5 wide empty in that set, but you have to consistently at least get a few first downs. And no one can tell me that that was okay. When you get outscored 19-0 in any quarter and you give up 188 yards after that masterpiece for 45 minutes, you have to work on that. In fact, Mario Cristobal and the players, this is what I like. They all understand that was not acceptable. If you want to be a championship level club, that is a habit. That is a lifestyle. You don't ever let up. And this is where the impact actually matters. So, guys, didn't Ruben Bain and Messidor play over 70 snaps each? Right?
Yeah, like 76
guys,
and 77.
We don't have Hayden Lowe. We're a little thin up front, right? Every team is a little thin. You just get 3 or 4 more first downs in that quarter, you shave off about 4.5 to 5 minutes. And instead of having to play 77 snaps, they're closer to 60. That stuff adds up. And I'll tell you why. If we think that we have the team that everyone says we do, you're not just playing 12 or 13 games anymore. You're not even just playing 15. To go to the mountaintop, to climb Mount Everest, you got to play about 16 or 17 games. So I believe you have to play for blowouts. When I judge a fighter, the guys that absolutely end it emphatically with knockouts, I would rather have that. And I judge those guys a little harder or much higher than the guys that just eke out split decisions. How you win actually says a lot about you as a football team.
Yeah, and look, you get more playing time for your young guys, right? You develop your roster like Alabama did for all those years when you get these blowouts, and you could play your young guys in those games, not just FAMU or Bethune, during the conference play. We'll see how that happens during the rest of the ACC. I think you might have an opportunity for those. Devil's advocate, I'll say Miami, I believe, is covered every single game. So that's progress.
But Steve, I essentially have said the same thing. You put it very well when you said you wanted an exclamation point, and there was a period there because, man, it just felt so different at the end of the game there. Yeah. I agree with what D says, but you still look at the numbers. FSU technically outgained Miami. Not technically, they did outgain Miami. And we're talking a lot about the offense. How about the defense? I think what you're saying is, to your point, is some of the guys up front, because there was, there's not as much rotation there right now. You allow them to convert some of these, fourth downs. And look, to Florida State's credit, they were actually, moving the chains there. I think Miami, if you would have asked them and Corey Heather before the game, hey, you're going to get Castellanos in some of these third and fourth and longish passing situations. That's pretty much exactly what you would have asked for, right? So they didn't execute defensively there in the fourth quarter either. I would say we're focusing a lot on the offense, and the defense is hard to nitpick because they've been phenomenal this year. But I think, to your point about the guys wearing down a bit, we have to look at what happened there in the fourth.
Peter, defense. I thought your post-game summation was perfect. I really do. Look, championship-level programs would not be satisfied with the end of that game. And Mario wants to have a championship program, and I'm glad he's actually saying that fourth quarter was not acceptable. I still remember a great story from Mel Bratton. I was talking to him one day, and he said they were winning a game, but they were scuffling. And Melvin's in the huddle. Everyone's laughing. He looks over, and Jimmy Johnson's seething. And Mel Bratton gets back, puts his head back in the huddle. Hey, fellas, man, let's stop f***ing around. You see Jimmy? And he says, the bottom line was this. If Jimmy liked the way you played, you got steak if he didn't like the way you played, regardless of the result, you got spam. So Melvin basically said, guys, how do we want to eat this week? I actually looked it up. There was a game in 1993. This was Jimmy's back-to-back Super Bowl year. It was the 13th game of the year. And they played Minnesota at the Dome. And Dallas let up a late touchdown. It made the score 34-20. So the game was really over with about a minute to go. So it made the score 37-20, and Jimmy was pissed. It actually ruined the game for him. And people say, well, Jimmy, you're going too far. No, well, here's the thing. I actually think if you look at the really good teams, they don't have these quarters because it's a habit. I think this program's been so soft. Now we just take a victory. But with that said, I'm going to give Florida State credit. I think Castellanos is a scrappy competitor. He never gave up. He was running around. Our guys got tired. But to that point, it's been proven statistically, guys, and Lance Roffers could probably talk about it more than I can. No matter how dominant or talented a defense is, after about 65 plays, their effectiveness declines. Because fatigue it's not always about being a coward. Fatigue will break down your fundamentals. I see it in boxing all the time. And we left our guys out on the field too long. And there was a couple of drives where I said, Shannon, open this thing back up. You have to go out there and shave some time off the clock. And I believe our last 3-4 drives, none of them took even more than 2.5 minutes. And so that right there was not great situational football.
So Steve, I got to talk to you about the progress of the roster. Actually, but first, let's talk about some folks that are consistently progressing, and that is U Health. That is the University of Miami Sports Medicine Institute. You consider yourself an athlete. Pete's on the pitch. Steve's in the boxing gym. I'm running around. You just want to be active. You probably know how hard it is to sit on the injured list with pain or injury. You can try to hack your own rehab, get back earlier. But if compromising your movement or performance is not an option, you want to get back to 100%. Call the experts at the University of Miami Sports Medicine Institute. Whether it's elite competition like the University of Miami Sidelines, everyday movement, the University of Miami Sports Medicine Institute is the trusted choice for those who demand excellence. Set an appointment today at uhealthsports.com. All right, so Steve, you touched on this at the top of the show, and I want to come back to it because I pulled up the depth chart for the Miami Hurricanes for their opening game against Texas A&M in 2022. This was Mario's first year. So this is after Mario came in, signed the class, got transfers. This is not what he inherited. This is what he inherited plus. So quarterback, Tyler Van Dyke, currently a backup. We know how that story ended as far as his mental breakdown on the field. Running back, it's an or situation. Henry Parrish or Jalen Knighton. Two guys under 190 pounds. So I think a little bit of size difference from those guys to what we're seeing with Mark Fletcher here.
And our power back was Thad Franklin. Don't forget him.
Oh, yeah, there he is right there on the roster. We got a guy named Lucius Stanley, who I believe was picked up straight off the street.
Yes.
UAB.
He's a UAB guy, but he was literally he's like a street free agent. Like he wasn't
in August.
It was like in the middle of the season. Yeah. John Campbell or Zion Nelson at left tackle. I think Zion never played that year, if I recall. Maybe he did. I don't remember. But Campbell ended up being that guy. And then left guard Jalen Rivers, NFL player, right? The one NFL player who was developed under Mario. Center Ja'Kai Clark. So you have three centers on the right side of this offensive line. You have Ja'Kai Clark, who's 6'3", really a center. Justice Oluwasian, if you remember him, I believe he's from Houston. Where he was from UNLV, something like that.
UNLV.
6'3".
With Justice.
Yeah,
Justice
6'3", another center type body. DJ Scaife, 6'3", at right tackle, another center type body. Then you go to receiver, and basically you're talking about SMU's receiving core. Colby Young eventually, who was an addition by Mario, ended up working his way up. And then you had Restrepo, but he was banged up this year. Tight end, you had Arroyo, but he was hurt. Will Mallory, NFL player. That was your best prospect on that offense. That's your offense. I mean, physically, just body-wise, the comparison is night and day. These guys are all pretty much undersized. So that's just the offense. On the defensive side, and Steve, I promise you I'll kick it back to you. I just want to – this is just –
You glossed over Brashard Smith.
He was a receiver, which, of course, we know he can't play. Made the move to running back.
He's a phenomenal running back.
He's a very athletic kick returner and running back specialist. So On the defensive side, Steve and Pete, Messidor at end, of course, is now back where he began, but he wasn't what he was then. He's worked his way up. He was very good then, though. Taylor and Harrison Hunt, two underachieving, undersized defensive ends. Daryl Jackson, our old friend at defensive tackle. Jafari Harvey, another SMU guy. And defensive backfield. I'm going piece by piece because I just want to paint the picture. I had not looked at this in a while, Steve. I promise you, I'm going to give you the floor. The Corey Couch at nickel, 175. Corey Flagg, 5'10 at best at linebacker. Wayman Steed, 5'11 and banged up. Our guy. Then the secondary actually got good players. DJ Ivy, pro. Cam Kitchens, pro. James Williams, pro. Tyreek Stevenson, pro. But they didn't perform like that for various reasons with coaches that are no longer here. So, Steve, as I go through that roster, which was not even what Mario inherited. It was what Mario inherited plus what he added. How far have we come?
Light years. I mean, you're talking about guys like Michael Redding was our third or fourth receiver. Keontre Smith, I believe, was our nickel backer. You know, I was looking back. So this is where I'm very grateful to the efforts of Mario Cristobal and his staff. If you go back to 2022, last night I'm watching ESPN2, and who else was playing but Middle Tennessee State? And that was the game that was right after the A&M loss. We lost that one 17-9. And I don't know if people remember this, but that was the MTSU game was a rain delay or weather delay game, right? So it took about another hour or so to get going. And if you watched it on TV, they couldn't use all the cameras because of the lightning. So by the time they got to the game, they showed this really funny camera angle. And I wish I would have kept it on my DVR because it almost looked like they had what I call the vertigo vision. It was just very strange. And that was a game that Tyler Van Dyke basically threw 2 interceptions in his first 3 passes. We get blown out. And it was, look, we played A&M pretty tough at Kyle Field. So you're thinking, okay, we can bounce back. We could still piece together 8-9 wins. The MTSU game, I believe, was a slap in the face of reality to every single one of us. Like, we're in trouble. This right here is shades of 1997. And this is a funny story. My buddy, Canes Are Able, one of the great posters on CIS, Spencer.
Our guy.
Let's go back to the week before Florida State. He had moved from California to Texas, and he's in town. I said, oh, great. Let's meet at Barney's Beanery in Hollywood. Now, Barney's Beanery, for all the LA Canes out there, they have a weekly game watch with a lot of the UM alums, UM fans. They clear off half the building for us. But the Virginia game, the one that started by Jake Garcia, it's another name, a blast from the past.
Michigan now, Steve.
Yes. Well, and so that game starts at 9 a.m. Pacific time. Well, Barney's Beanery, this is LA. We're not serious people out here. They don't open till 10, even on college football Saturday. So I'm like, oh, God, I got to move. Yeah, I know. So I tell Spencer, I said, Spencer, let's meet for breakfast, but meet me at 10 because they're not opening till 9. So I'm literally leave my house at about 9:40. I'm watching this game on my phone. And when we get to the Barney's Beanery, and this is the bandwagon nature of everybody, me and Spencer were the only people there watching the Miami game. It was one of the most depressing things. And I'm like, people, you don't, I get it. We're not good, but we only get 12 of these a year. So literally they clear off half the building for us. And me and Spencer are by ourselves with the guy that sets it up. And he still asked us to sign in. So think about this, guys. That game, I think, was a double overtime game, but the score was only 14-12.
0 touchdowns.
That's almost impossible in modern day college football to go into double overtime and to win 14-12. And I still remember Jake Garcia rolling out. And I love Jake. He's a California kid. Jake, you could have flipped it to Khalil Brantley and given him his moment of glory, but he was so afraid of his own arm, he just ran it in and we won. And I remember going home because Spencer had to go, and I'm thinking, we're bad. That's the worst win I've ever seen. And then the next week, I remember the buildup. Okay, we're going to rally the troops. Rivalry game. We sell it out. We're going to beat Florida State. Man, Jordan Travis drops back, sees it. Pokey Wilson running past DJ Ivy, hit him on the post. And I remember thinking, it's over. It's over.
Well,
And it was 45-3. And I said, wow, this is Mario's 1997, because that was as bad as 47-0. And look where we are now. Got to give Cristobal credit.
So where are we now? What did you see when you watched Miami? With all that context, we took everybody down a very painful memory lane. Just how bad the roster was, how bad that season was. We're 4 years here, flash forward, watching Miami against the Florida State, same Florida State team that really maybe outclass is the wrong word, beat us up there in 2022. So now, fast forward, what are you seeing with this program?
There are, right now, this particular season, there are 3 teams that stand out: Oregon, Ohio State, Miami. And look, there may be a 4th team, maybe Alabama keeps coming on. But when I look at those 3 teams, they are complete football teams on both sides of the line of scrimmage. They have high-level quarterback play. I think Julian Sain is actually coming on. They're unfolding that offense. I think Ryan Day's done a really good job of bringing him along. But, someone actually said, Steve, wait till next year. And I said, folks, with the transfer portal and the NIL, this is a semester-to-semester sport. There are no more 5-year developmental runs. You play year to year. And I told this person, unless you know something about Reuben Bain and Carson Beck, we have them for about, hopefully, 14 more games or 13 more games. That's the way I'm looking at it. So you have to make it work now. As George Allen once said, the future is now. Miami is built, if everything goes okay and we don't get hit with the rash of injuries, knock on wood, this is a team that should have more aspirations than just making it to Charlotte in the first week of December. It should be a team that should not be satisfied with just making the playoffs. That's what I see.
Yeah, built, for success. I think Aaron Murray, the old quarterback from Tampa who went to Georgia, he compared Miami to an NFL team. Not saying like this is like a team that could go line up against the Philadelphia Eagles and play a game. What he meant was they're not like a college kind of gimmicky type of team. It's more just like, hey, listen, this is our team. We're going to run these plays. We're going to execute these plays. Maybe we'll focus on a matchup here and there. But this is basically what we do. And there's not going to be a lot of gimmicks to it, right? As far as like some kind of crazy offense you've never seen, like what FSU's, how they, obviously being a very college-y team. He said Miami is much more of a pro team. If you need to play our run game, they're going to pass. If you need to play our pass game, we're going to run. And we have a quarterback that can control a lot at the line of scrimmage. So as we shift to the rest of the schedule there, Steve, ACC play, Florida State, of course, ACC team, but that's kind of a different deal. It's just such a rivalry game. You got to put that in its own pocket. I stole this from someone on Twitter, and I'm going to keep using it. 3 seasons. Rivalry, state championship season, resounding success, 5-0, state champs, beat Notre Dame. Now we're in ACC championship season, followed by, hopefully, playoff try to win the national championship season. So as we look at this next segment, which we'll say the ACC championship season, what does Miami need to do to avoid what's happened every other year?
Very simple. Don't drink the rat poison. And I said it last week, guys. If we get past Florida State, we're going 12-0. And I'll stick by that. And, guys, Danny, me and you talked about it last week. I think the second bye week, actually, I kind of like it now, given the fact that our defenders were wore out. Bain and Messidor. You got to keep those guys' legs fresh. And now we're going to play Louisville on 13 days' notice. I think it worked out well. Here's the reality, guys, and I get it. Winning every game is tough, and Mario's mantra is 1-0. I get it. That's a coach's mindset. That should be a program mindset. But those guys out there in the desert of Las Vegas, they kind of know what they're talking about. They're the real experts here, okay? We're going to be a double-digit favorite every game forward. And we're not going to play a quarterback that has the twitch or the reflexes or the escapability. Maybe Kevin Jennings, maybe Chiron Drones. He's a big, strong athlete, kind of a Jalen Hurts light. But Castellanos is a difficult guy. I know he's limited. He might be a slot receiver at the next level. But he brings certain variables that no one else does. And that's what made that
game
dangerous.
CJ Bailey, Steve?
Yeah, but Bailey's more of a pocket passer that happens to have some athleticism. And CJ's turned the ball over a little bit.
That doesn't concern you more than a Castellanos who obviously has athleticism but can't throw the ball. I think Bailey's going to present some issues
with our pass rush and the revamped secondary. Unless they're bringing back Torrey Holt, I'll take my chances with that. And again, that is a home game. That's not in Raleigh. Just look at the odds.
It's a home game for CJ too, man. I don't know.
Okay, well, again, welcome to the asylum. But my view is this: look at the odds, guys. And I know there's websites that track this. Danny, Peter, we're gonna be a double-digit favorite in every game moving forward. That's all. We should win those games, and I think we will.
Yeah, I think the big thing when I see ACC play, Pete, just chime in if you disagree or have any thoughts, is when you watch the FSU game, which of course FSU being an ACC team, rivalry game, road game, those were the weird things. But when you watch the actual football matchup, they knew that if they just lined up and played football, they could not stop Miami's running game. We are too big up front. We are too, I'll use the word conservative, meaning like you can't just catch us on a bad day and live in the backfield because we had that wall. But then the combination of that kind of conservative, low-risk style, the incredible physical mismatch that we presented from a size standpoint and a talent standpoint, offensive line-wise, and then with the backs that can run over the linebackers, they could not play our running game straight because it would be a bloodbath just on a straight man-to-man basis and the way we play our scheme. They chose to play the pass. They couldn't rush the passer. They couldn't cover, and we saw what happened. I'm looking at this ACC schedule, and I don't see any front on the schedule or really in the conference that can match up Miami's running game. They have the same exact problem that FSU has, or worse, across the schedule. So what I'm wondering is, are we just going to see the same playbook in every single game where teams are forced to take away the run, and then Beck just eats them alive?
I believe so. And remember what's one of the great cliches in football that's absolutely true? Defense travels. If you go back to last year, I remember going into back-to-back games. I went to the Virginia Tech game. That was a Friday night. And look, I try to be as positive as possible in my late cynical years. And I said, okay, that's a bad game. We're going to clean it up. We're going to clean it up. We're going to get better. Then I make the trip up to Cal. We're down 35-10, 5 minutes into the third quarter, and needed a miraculous Cam Ward-led victory. And I remember thinking, this defense cannot be fixed. And then we played Louisville, and we literally needed every single one of those 52 points to come out of there undefeated. And then we had a bye week, and then I think we played Florida State. But I remember thinking, this is going to be very tricky because defensively, in the words of Mario Cristobal over the summer, we lost our way. This is why this is different. Defense travels.
Yep.
Violence and physicality up front travels. A run game travels. The throw game can be a little bit more difficult because of crowd noise. But even our road game, now I'm going to be in Dallas. I'm going up for SMU. That's not the biggest stadium in the world. I expect Rhett Lashley to have a great game plan. They've lost some close games. They're still pretty dangerous offensively. But they've also lost a lot of guys up front. A lot of guys that we know of, Elijah Roberts, Justin Harrison Hunt, Jafari Harvey, right? They're not the same team as they were last year. We have decided advantages physically over every single team they play. Again, Pitt might be dangerous because that's on the road, late game on the East Coast. And then Virginia Tech, that's still a late game, late season, cold weather game. But they just fired their coach. Again, I'm looking at this 1-0 each week should be the focus. But the fact is this, I don't believe there's a team that's going to be anything less than at least a 10 to 12 point underdog moving forward the rest of the season.
Yeah, and I think we run through the ACC, and I think the fact of the matter is it's about finding some of these other young guys. Like, not everyone's going to be Malachi, not everyone's going to be Bryce Fitzgerald that's ready to make an impact against the Notre Dames, Florida States right off the bat. But can Luka Gilbert, for example, does he start to work himself into more of a role there? Can some of these young defensive linemen, I think of Herbert Scroggins, I'm looking at him because Steve, it's Cole McConaughey working himself back. I know he was dressed out last game. He wasn't on the injury report, so you have to think that he's pretty close to being ready to see some real action here. But that depth is, and again, people may get on me, but as they have all off season when I bring this topic up, because the first guys have been so darn good that it's like, yeah, who cares about behind them? But you got to find another guy or two who can be parts of that rotation.
Yeah.
You don't see, it's not going to be Bain or Mesidor when they aren't out there. But
yeah, that's where the
gotta,
Hayden Lowe thing hurts.
Trust.
The Hayden Lowe would be a great addition off the edge, late game situations. I'd like to see that pterodactyl, that young specimen, Wiley out there, play a role in the front seven. Again, we're trying to play 16 to 17 games. You're going to need more bodies than ever. But fellas, you know what great programs really do on a week-to-week basis, regardless of who they play? They play themselves.
Yep.
They do. I think
Florida State does that. Florida State's done it the last 2 weeks. Steve.
Yeah, they keep beating themselves. So they theoretically go really undefeated except against themselves. But the most impressive statistic in regards to Nick Saban is not just the number of national titles and SEC championships he's won. I read a stat that he was like 93-0 after 2007 or something against unranked opponents. That means systematically each week, that program at Tuscaloosa was ready to play ball, and they took care of business. Let's go back to last year. Coming into November, we were 9-0, and I believe rated number 2 in the country. We lost 2 games as double-digit favorites. I'm well aware of the fact nothing is guaranteed. I was at that Georgia Tech game, and it was depressing. I had great seats at the 50-yard line with my buddy Roland. Roland, if you're out there, hello. And we got to see a bunch of future engineering students rush the field. It was surreal. I'd never actually seen one before. 2-3 weeks later.
An engineering student or a field rush?
No, all of them. All the engineering students. All the future bridge builders.
No, but I said, you said you hadn't seen one before. I said, are you talking about a field rush or an engineering student?
Well, I grew up around Asian students. I'm sure I saw both of them. But anyway, look, the reality is then we go into Syracuse. We have a 21-0 lead after one quarter. Didn't make it home. So nothing is taken for granted. And what is the one knock on Mario? People always say, well, he always blows a game or two. He shouldn't. Okay, the track record is the track record. This is the season where Mario has to put that to rest.
So, Steve, real quick, because we got Lance Roffers coming on. And actually, I think you guys have an overlap. We got you until 10:15. When do you got to? Until 10:10?
10:10, yeah.
10 for you. All right, sweet. So, I have a little bit of overlap. We'll really have the four horsemen here.
Oh, wow.
I guess so. I guess it's the 4 horsemen. I can count.
Well, we can call it the 3 horsemen. I'm like the jockey.
You're big for a jockey, man. You're in the Duffy's angle, man.
I'm not
this one you get all your
I'm not
compliments
horseman material.
Hey, but so Steve, this question came in the chat. Actually, it came to us yesterday. We talked about it, and the question was best defensive end combo in University of Miami history. Of course, with the question being, are Bain, Mesidor that? Now, the first defensive end combo that I was able to see as someone who was old enough to at least understand football a little bit was Kennard Lang and Kenny Holmes, both first-round picks. That one jumps out to me, 2 first-rounders. Again, not the best time for Miami football at that point, but it was my first kind of, hey, I'm watching the first round of the draft and our guys are getting picked. So for me, that one stands out quite a bit. The one that we missed was Greg Rousseau and Jalen Phillips. That would have been unreal if we would have got those guys. Quincy Roche, still a good player, got drafted, played in the NFL, got sacked, a couple sacks in the NFL, and was very productive in college. So that was still a good one. You can take it back further. Appreciate you, Lorenzo, for your support and your service. So, Steve, you can take it back further. What is the best defensive end combination in Miami history?
Well, I think that Bain Mesidor right now are Crockett and Tubbs. They are the Miami Vice. They're trending to being number 1. But again, we're only halfway through, or not even halfway through this 2025 season. I said on Coach JB's show 2 years ago, Ruben Bain was the best pure football player Miami has had since Sean Taylor. When I start formulating these lists, and I might do another one after the season.
Cam Ward is pretty good too.
Yeah, but I agree. But defensively, I get the sense, and I always waited more till multi-year players. In all respect to Cam Ward, he made an unbelievable contribution. But I'm old school. The guys that played 2, 3, 4 years at Miami, those guys are going to always get a little bit more credit from me. That's just the way I am. I believe Ruben Bain will leave this program as a top 20 all-time player. Now, I'll just leave it at that, but we'll see how the rest of the season plays out. Some of the great defensive end combinations you talked about, I thought Jerome McDougal with Andrew Williams and Jamal Green, they were kind of like a 3-man rotation. They played bookends. I thought they were very good for those 2 seasons in 2001 and 2002. growing up, Danny Stubbs, alongside the likes of Greg Mark and Bill Hawkins, I thought those guys were really, really good. Kennard Lang and Kenny Holmes are actually, as you mentioned, the only bookends that I can recall that were each concurrently first-round draft choices. But I have to say, on a game-to-game basis, another one last one. Rusty Medeiros in 1991, and the other ends were basically a combination of Darren Crine and Kevin Patrick. I thought those guys were unbelievable in terms of having a motor. That 1991 defense gave up 9.1 yards or 9.1 points per game. It's one of the three best defenses I've ever seen at Miami. And they did it with a pair of defensive tackles in Eric Miller and Anthony Hamlet that were probably about 250 pounds each. Sonny Lubick did a hell of a job. So those are the end combinations that immediately come to mind as the greatest of all time at Miami.
So I'm going to bring a combination together here. And by the way, there are 4 horsemen here, Pete. I just was struggling to count this morning because I haven't had my coffee. But yes, you are part of the 4 horsemen, as the chat reminded me. But in terms of guest, this might be the greatest guest combo that we've had. You got Steve Kim, the historian, the sage, as they just called you in the old school sage. So you got to start dyeing your hair if they're calling you old school sage.
Kim.
But we got the old school sage, and then the professor right here, the master of Roffermetrics. Upon further review, you read it on CanesInsight.com. 7.6 million posts and counting, but no post more informative than what you get from Hurricane Vision on Twitter and social media, and then Lance Roffers on Canes Insight. That's his name. That's what we're going to call him, Lance Roffers. Lance, how we doing?
Hey, not bad. How are you guys doing? Hey, Steve.
Lance, good morning.
Hey, good morning. Yeah, I listen to Steve, and I'm just like, man, he can pull out names and plays and memories, and you know, I can barely remember what I'm supposed to be working on at the moment. So good for you.
Same thing, man. But here we go. We got your article, which is great. If you guys haven't read it, you can see it on social media, but you can really see it on CanesInsight.com. Just go to the front page. You'll see it. Upon further review, Miami versus Florida State. As you can see, Lance breaks this thing down to the detail, to where the shoulder's supposed to be, to where the eyes are looking, all assignments, all kinds of stuff. I can't get into all of it here. We got to just go read the article. But Lance, big picture, man, having read your articles for a long time, especially with some teams that are below par at Miami, seem you were very optimistic on the state of the Canes based on what you read or what you saw in that game, what you did on that breakdown. So what do you see on film that makes you optimistic about what this team actually is? Forget the record, forget the perception, just what the team actually is on tape. Why do you feel optimistic after what you saw?
Yeah, I think that every time they have a hurdle, it's kind of like a new, okay, can they clear this hurdle with this team this season with what we've seen, you know, from the past 20 years? And this was, you know, a road game against a rival with an offense that to me is very difficult to prepare for. I honestly believe that the coaching staff at Florida State does a great job with their offense as far as just schematics go. Talent-wise, you know, you can judge that how you're going to judge that, right? But just from what does a coach add to, you know, the schematics standpoint, I've always believed that Gus Malzahn has a system that's difficult to prepare for. I think it's one that you're not going to see very often. And in this particular game, he definitely, you know, he emptied the clip, as I kind of said in the article, right, where he just basically any kind of play or any kind of misdirection that you could come up with, he tried it in this game. He was really trying to get some of those explosives, you know, touchdowns from outside the red zone, where he didn't have to try and, you know, line up against these edge players, you know, multiple trips down on a drive to be able to score. And so to me, it was super impressive the way that Miami was able to kind of withstand that initial, you've got the crowd, you've got their lights, their, you know, stadium that they're opening up with. They're coming off a loss, right, where, you know, if you've played, you know, right, that you understand the situation of what your season looks like, right? And so Florida State has a loss. They know having another is going to be very difficult for them to reach their goals. And they're at home, they're opening up that stadium, and then they get the ball first, right? And they have this drive that's beautifully scripted. There were some really cool plays, when you're breaking it down as a kind of like a film geek like I am, where you're like, oh, I would steal that, if I were coaching. And they popped some plays, but they got down into the red zone, and Miami was able to actually make a couple of adjustments from things that they did wrong early in the drive to, when they got into the red zone and stopped Castellanos on one of his scrambles to keep him out of the end zone. And from that point, really it was Miami just, okay, now we understand the rhythm of the game. We've really kind of identified what some of these eye candy and motions and different plays that Florida State's going to try and hit us with. And we're better than them. And you saw that really just an attitude that Miami realized we are the better team and, we're going to control. And that was something that really kind of stood out to me when you're watching the way the teammates really battled for each other, right? It really is a Miami team right now that is, looking for the team success rather than personal success. And that's not always the case in these reviews. I don't always point it out as much, because you don't want to really like make claims like that. But what I try and do is point out when I do see evidence of that. And it's really all over the film this season.
Lance, I have a question for you. Big picture view. Has this team surprised you? I mean, does it have a higher ceiling than you thought coming into this 2025 campaign?
Yeah, absolutely it does. And the reason why is I didn't expect the defense to make this big of a leap year over year. There were times last year when I was doing some of these reviews, I would basically just throw my hands up like, this is just a simple motion, right? And players would act like it was learning Mandarin. And this game, you had some of the most complex motions you're ever going to see from a Gus Malzahn offense. And Miami handled it beautifully, except for a couple of situations where maybe they got crossed up. So that is one, right? I personally, I play defense and love defense, and personally do not believe that you can go and, reach championships without a certain baseline of defense. And last year we just simply didn't have that. You've got Bang being healthy, and that's an elevation, but you also have Mesidor on the other side, who is really playing like an All-American. And 2 All-American edge players was not something I would have forecasted, right? So that's kind of one. And then on the back end, some of that depth is greater than I expected. Jacoby Thomas, I did make a post, over in August about how I felt like he was a perfect fit. I don't know that I expected him to be a star, though. And so some of those things have really raised the ceiling for me. And then, of course, when you're going from a Cam Ward to an injured quarterback, you don't know what that's going to look like, right? And so Beck has really been the guy I expected him to be, but wasn't sure of. So I think this team has the chance to be a Final Four national champion type team. And you would not have heard me ever say that in 2002, really.
So we got Steve for 4 minutes before we switch to Lance only. So I have both you guys. I wanted to bring this up because this is on Steve's rundown. And Lance, I know you're a Dolphins fan going back to the days of the greatest coach of all time, Don Shula, someone who claimed to be or was purported to be the greatest coach of all time, Bill Belichick, is having quite a bit of struggles without Tom Brady. Some might look at his record without Tom Brady as a quarterback, and this is a pretty large sample size, basically like 11 plus seasons worth of coaching in the NFL. And now we've seen a college sample size. Some might say that he is both a worse pro coach and college coach than Dave Wannstedt, statistically, when he doesn't have Tom Brady. Some might say, the numbers might say that. I call him Harold Melvin, after the leader of Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, who fell to obscurity when he lost Teddy Pendergrass, who was the real star of that operation. Lance, Steve. Let's start with Steve, because Steve's on the clock.
Wow.
What are you seeing with UNC here?
Well, you bring up Teddy Pendergrass. I think one of my favorite songs. I guess Belichick is a victim of a love TKO. But I think they're figuring out one thing, and Coach JB talks about this a lot. The modern
they're about
college
to turn off
game.
the lights. They're about to turn off the lights there, Steve, in UNC. If we got to get another song there.
The modern college game is schematically has influenced pro football more than vice versa, and with the RPO, the inverted triple option, all these other things. And Coach JB had said that this is going to be a difficult adjustment for an NFL guy only to come into the modern college game. Also, the arrogance that they came in with, and Michael Lombardi's a guy that I've listened to for years. I've always kind of liked him, but when he took a shot at our coach and our program, and said, "Look at Mario, they just buy what are they like?" Mike, how you doing? How you is it? It's not that easy, is it? So that's the way I feel about it. But one thing I noticed, and Lance can get into schematics, I looked at the body language of those UNC players last Saturday in the first 2 drives. I said they've quit on him. I thought it was very evident they had checked out on this whole thing.
Yeah, I kind of echo everything that Steve said there, right? Moving from the structure environment, professionals to a college game where you've got to, restock a roster and install a defensive game plan. Belichick, what was he always built on, right? He was built on, game plans that were week to week, that were opponent driven, that, he really identified what was their strength and trying to take that away. In college, it's just not that easy to do that. And you've got players on shorter amount of time and you have less practice time. To me, I didn't expect it to quite be this dumpster fire of a situation that it has turned out to be, honestly. But I'm kind of loving it. As a Dolphins fan, I'm kind of enjoying seeing some pain from old Bill. And I hope that North Carolina gets to feel it overall as well, because they've also inflicted a game on me that will kind of live in my memory forever, where they ran for like 9,000 yards against us. So,
there's a few of those games, man, against North Carolina that kind of live in.
The 2004 upset, we were the number 3 or 4 team. And I'll say one thing, though, about Carolina. They play one game where I think they might win. That's Stanford, who might be the worst team in all of Power 4 outside of Stanford. I actually think if this
only
is
for the time being, Steve, because
right,
they have a $50 million donation coming in.
They do. And Pete, here's the thing. You're going to love this. I think the loser of Stanford, Carolina should be relegated. They should be kicked out of the ACC.
Listen, I agree with you, and then we can bring one of these other programs that's having a good run up into the conference. Why not?
But I think it's been a comeuppance, and I thought the very beginning, the way the error Jordan was brought into. Look, I don't care who anyone's with. That's not my business. But as a football coach, you have to be a face of the program, and the fact that she was brought around so publicly and trotted out on the field I could not imagine Jessica Cristobal before the game. This is different. Being on the field. I don't think Mario would allow it. Now, after the game, it's different. You're out there with your husband, you celebrate, you take a great picture. That's being a football wife. But that whole thing was a circus and a sideshow. And you have to know how to be a football wife. I mean, one of the great stories I heard about Jimmy Johnson was the reason why Rhonda Rookmaker, who he's been with for 30 years, the reason why she's perfect for Jimmy, I read this in a book, Steve Hubbard, Swimming with Sharks. She understood that after a loss, if you're on the team playing, there's only 2 words you say, yes, Jimmy, and that's it. Don't laugh at a joke. Don't breathe too hard. Don't even sneeze. Jimmy's in a bad mood. Let him drink his Heineken on ice. This thing has become a circus, and the irony is the coach who said no distractions was the biggest distraction in all of football by himself. Think about that.
Oof. Steve, get us out of here with your plugs.
Yeah, guys, we just want to let everyone know, again, the Cruz family, thank you very much for allowing this to happen. Guys, Hard Rock Stadium, go out there. Game days, 10% all non-sale items by wearing your gear at Jensen Sunset Corners. That's on 8701 72nd Street, Miami. And, guys, I'm going to be on Coach JB's show in a bit. I'm on Twitter. Steve323, Steve Orale Kim. On Instagram, I do the 3 knockdown rule with Mario Lopez. Yes, that one. And I'll be on with Jason Whitlock on Fearless in about an hour and a half. And Lance, great to talk to you guys.
You too.
Thank you, Steve.
Peak CIS is what the comments said there, Lance. So Lance, we got detours. I had to bring up that UNC thing. It was just sitting there. Steve wanted to talk about it, and I can't miss an opportunity to talk about why Don Shula, who went to the Super Bowl with Woodley and Strzok and many other quarterbacks, is the greatest coach of all time.
Undefeated, right? He can win with the backups, win with the starter. He can win with different teams. Yeah, I mean.
Unfortunately, South Carolina fans aren't too happy with Mike Shula these days. But
hopefully he sends his quarterback
Columbus
to the
Columbus guy. Probably stepped foot in this very Duffy's Tavern once or twice.
Probably did. You're probably right. Now, Bringing it all back. Okay, back. Upon further review, Lance Roffers, the legendary Hurricane Vision on Twitter. You do these breakdowns. We were talking earlier as we go through your article, which is on CanesInSight.com, 7.6 million posts and counting. You were talking about just all the things that FSU does on offense to really throw you off, some cool stuff, particularly in those opening drives. Why was that ultimately ineffective against this Miami defense?
Yeah, so I think something that, as you're watching a football game, it's important to understand that the coaches are going to have like scripted plays based on what your tendencies are and what they've seen on film over the last, I don't know, however many weeks, right? A lot of these P4s now, basically they have an army of analysts, and those analysts aren't looking at, your specific opponent that week. They're looking weeks ahead for your tendencies, what you're doing, what do you do on third down, what do you do in the red zone, what do you do on first? And they're looking for just any kind of little margin or edge that they can get, right? And what they do when they're building out a script is obviously play off of those tendencies. Well, Teray obviously has a tendency to be aggressive downhill, right? He tends to be better going downhill than going backwards, right? So one of the very first things that they attempted to do is to get his eyes in the wrong place using either two back sets and moving them in a way that they typically don't. On that play, typically that individual running back that runs the wheel, right, he goes to the flat in that situation, right? And the running back on the other side steps up, and he either goes outside the B gap and then makes a left, to a little flat, or he runs an arrow, or he blocks, right? That's what they've done as far as tendencies go. And Teray saw that running back, take a step to the flat like he typically does. His responsibility, is that little area over there, and he jumped it, and he ran right by him, right? So that was a big play. That
and by the way, just let me, because I want to make sure, because I was rolling through all the article, I want to make sure I'm pulling the pictures as you go through the article. When you're talking about things, you post the pictures. So
that's the one.
If you haven't checked it, go to CanesInSight.com so you can follow along close. But this is the picture you're talking about, right?
Yep. So I've got reds and yellows there, right? So red circles and yellow circles are basically covering each other on this particular play. You can see Teray has eyes on yellow there, and little red circle runs right by him. We actually don't have anyone on the outside. That's why I'm so confident in the fact that that's Teray's man there, because you wouldn't build a defense with a single high safety and a man coverage corner there, which could be run out of that zone and then completely leave that side, right, where you just have an off mic like that. This may look like, you're out leveraged right here, but if Teray has eyes on that running back, he can get hip to hip and run with him there. And basically the only thing that's open there is a little dump off to the running back in the flat. And it may be open in this particular case whenever they run that wheel and run him off, and that linebacker there, that's the mic, has to get all the way out there. Maybe you get 5 yards on it, but you'll live with that, right? In this particular situation, though, we had two guys take the flat, no one take the wheel. It could have been a touchdown, so we were kind of lucky there that didn't happen. There were more than one play in this game where, if Castellanos makes a better throw or a quicker throw, that it's probably a touchdown. They also had a drop on one that could have been a touchdown as well. So there were some instances where FSU, kind of schemed up a shot play. But we're humans. We're all humans, right? And nobody in any game basically is 100% or perfect in any situation that they capitalize on every single one. There were a couple that happened in this game. But basically what happened here, is I'm sure, Heatherman kind of made sure that Teray understood that let's be deeper than the deepest here. Let's stay wide. And if they get that 5 yard flat, we'll live to fight another day, unless your responsibility is like to green dog or blitz. Green dog is essentially when you're a coverage player and you have nobody threaten your area, you just attack forward and you kind of insert yourself into the pressure package, or if you just are already identified as part of the pressure package, right? And those are the areas that Teray is probably best at rather than going backwards. And I think Florida State kind of tried to identify matchups where they could get Teray going backwards at the start of the game. Miami identified just a little bit, so they ran coverages less where that was something that needed to happen for Teray to be going backwards, right? Which is just good coaching. So I thought that was a first adjustment. Go ahead.
a bit of a general question here. Was there anything from this game? And I understand that Malzahn's offense is so different from what you're really going to see, but anything that really kind of stood out to you that, hey, someone else could bring something like this to the table and maybe present some issues for Miami? We talked about it with Steve before. I don't know how many teams can match up with Miami. There's not a single one I don't think that can match up with Miami on the schedule remaining in terms of the trenches, obviously, but anything in terms of the tricky stuff that we've referenced that gives you pause looking at moving forward.
Yeah, the next game, I've always believed that Braum is an excellent offensive schemer as well. He does it a little differently, right? Whereas maybe Florida State is more in their run game, and then some of the, I'll call them trick plays, just in the fact that, you get the ball back to the quarterback and he's either throwing screens to the other side or taking shot plays, things like that. With Louisville, they're going to scheme it more up in the pass game. And I really like Miller Moss as a quarterback. I think, he is prone to mistakes. So you can get him on some interceptions, things along those lines. But Braum is a fantastic schemer, and he really, again, kind of picks on what your tendencies are and is able to identify what are rule breakers. Basically, any defense is going to have okay, if one goes vertical, one being the wide receiver one or the receiver one to that side. If he goes vertical, I follow. You call this Meg. You can call, man everywhere he goes. You can call it mod, man only. And you can kind of identify what those rules are if you are a sharp schemer, right? And you just hold that play for the right spot, right? You keep that in your back pocket and you call it at the right time. And then when you get the opportunity,
Coach Heatherman calling you?
Yeah, he is. I put my focus on so I don't get a million slacks while we're doing this, but I'll turn it back on. Sorry. Yeah, and so I think that there are going to be situations where he can really threaten some of those crossers. He can put your safeties in kind of like a bind where, do you step down and take that and then maybe open up an opportunity behind? We've got corners that can, hold up in some of those situations, but that would be an area that can flip a game, right? We all know turnovers, explosives, third downs. Those are really what are going to decide most close games. You've got a road game, or you've got not a road game, but you've got a coach who has had some time to plan against you, has some film on you now. I think that's one game where they could really attack us in the intermediate to deep areas and get some of those explosives.
I thought this was an interesting part of your review, and I'm pulling this up. I mean, it's not really like an X's and O's breakdown. You do, I guess. You talked about the reverse or the tunnel screen action. Well, sorry, this is an end around. Is this a reverse? I don't even remember the play.
It's an end around. Yeah, they had some eye candy, but it was just a straight end around. Yeah.
So the common thought, and I had the same thought, Pete had the same thought, was he should have scored on this play. He had the numbers. It was just a matter of patience. I know they said that on the broadcast, but you really broke it down and looked at this play. There you see the diagram there, the circles. You think that he made the right decision speeding up and getting what he could get.
Yep, I do.
So break it down.
Yeah, so I honestly do believe that, and I've circled the two in yellow where I believe if he slowed down, he probably doesn't even get a first down on this play. So you've got your two wide there, one of them being Bauman, and I apologize, I'm not exactly certain on who the other one is off the top of my head, where they really widened their trip downfield, and I felt like they actually should have peeled back and taken the yellows. Where then Bell, he does make his block, and then Brockermeyer doesn't get a chance to actually block anybody on this play because Marion runs by him. But as I watched it multiple times, if he slows down at the line like the announcer said that he should, he's going to get tackled on the backside by the first yellow there. And if he slows down as he's going by 63 right there, he gets tackled by the pursuit that I've circled in yellow there. In fact, he almost got tackled by him as it is, right? That guy actually touched him as he was going by. So any kind of delay there, and I feel like that pursuer fills that hole right there and gets him down. To me, the best blocker on this play was actually Malinois, who does something really smart there and just slowed down in front of that FSU defender that he's blocking right there, instead of actually like turning and getting any kind of penalty for blindside type blocks, where you're going back. But, when I watched it live, I also thought that there was, if he slows down a little bit, he would have, had a chance to score there. I see some of the comments disagree with me, which is totally cool, right? But the way I saw it, I saw that the pursuit would have tackled him if he had slowed up.
It was such a cool visual seeing, as Play by the Rules says, just seeing everyone out in front of him like that. Though that was a nice looking play from the TV view.
So Lord Bay has a question. I'm going to flip it to you. I'm going to answer what I know, and then I'll flip it to you, Lance. He's asking, why haven't we seen more Malik Bryant? I thought he'd be in the rotation. He was part of the CC Bain class. I think it's really Messidor's playing at a high level, so he's playing a ton of snaps at that position, which is the boundary defensive end, which is the lighter defensive end. Messidor, of course, probably as heavy as you can get at that position while still being able to move. But that's the spot that Bryant would play. So Messidor's playing a ton of snaps. And then the emergence of Marquise Lightfoot and what he's been able to do, just to me, playing Messidor a lot and then playing Lightfoot, that just gobbles up all the snaps in these games. And it's hard to cut either one of those. You don't want Messidor to play less because he's playing at such a high level, and then Lightfoot is really doing his thing. You talked about Messidor playing at that All-America type level. What do you see from Lightfoot? Because to me, everybody saw the viral clip where he knocked out Pettis, the right tackle for FSU on the interception return, basically just popped him. I don't know if it was a concussion or what, but he didn't come back in the game. How much does Pettis weigh? 340 something pounds. So a lot bigger guy. It wasn't a cheap shot per se, but certainly kind of caught him by surprise. What have you seen from Lightfoot, his versatility? I know you've seen all the different ways he's been used. What do you like from Lightfoot, or not like? What do you see from Lightfoot?
Yeah, so it was a really nice physical block on that interception. And what I'm about to say, I don't want to make it sound like it's diminishing or anything along those lines. But, if someone doesn't see you coming and they're not running, right, even if they're a lot bigger than you, just simple physics where you have velocity, times your mass, you can really develop and impact a lot of force on someone, and
he coiled on that one.
Yeah. So I like that they're showing violence, but that's not where it draws my eye. I saw a lot of plays where he just plays with more violence than you would think someone of his size would be. There was a play where he actually takes on the left tackle and sets an edge and knocks the left tackle down. I thought it was Fitzgerald. He looked so skinny on the play, right? And then I watch back and I see 12, and I'm like, okay, that's actually Lightfoot. And just the ability to play with the violence that he plays with his slight frame is something that's really stood out to me, because, football is littered with these 210 to 230 pound edge rushers who struggle to put on weight that underwhelm, and they're just not able to reach expectations. And it's because they don't have that violence, part to their game, right? They just lack that just a little bit. The margins are really slim when we're talking about these P4 athletes out there, between making it and being in the rotation and being really good and playing at UNLV or something like that, and transferring out. And to me, Lightfoot, that ability to play with that violence and not just straight line speed is something that I've really enjoyed from him. He's someone I think has a really bright future next year, as he just has another year of gaining strength and really understanding this defense just a little bit. I think he's going to be really good. Malik Bryant has been better than I expected him to be on the edge. It's a great problem to have four, edge players who are just playing awesome right now and really doing their thing. And to not have a lot of injuries at that spot, we'll knock on wood on that one, right? But you've also got Booker Pickett, as an individual who's, stolen some snaps in there as well. And I think it's probably just a situation of Pickett and Bryant, waiting their turn at this point.
Jay Freeman asked why we seen McConaughey yet, another guy in that mix. I think I know he was banged up a little bit, but he's working his way back. So I think we'll see him here at some point. Yeah. But yeah, look, Lance, just big picture here. ACC. So one thing I talked about with Steve, and I'm bringing it back up with you, is look to me like FSU knew they could not handle our size up front and physicality up front. They knew we were a bad matchup, just the way we kind of stick tight together there and form that wall that they can't penetrate with their quick guys. Physically, there was a major mismatch with our size and athleticism and just our chemistry, our overall ability up front. The running backs for Mark Fletcher, the size, everything they had to deal with. So they were selling out against the run heavy, both in terms of just the way they were playing and the numbers. And then we threw the ball. That's what it looked like to me. And that's kind of the common perception of this game. Number one, is that accurate? Number two, as I look at this ACC schedule, I don't know anybody can match up physically with our run game. So are we going to see a repeat of what we saw against FSU in terms of how teams play and how we attack the rest of the ACC schedule? Because it seems like every ACC team has the exact same problem that FSU has.
Yeah, first off, you're exactly right. Florida State was definitely trying to crowd the gaps. They were trying to, remove any kind of interior creases, really to kind of take away some of that inside zone. In fact, many of our long runs in this game were actually off tackle, into the outer C gap and even some to the D gap. And you get a lot of fans who are clamoring for those outside runs a little bit more, into the C and D gaps more. One in particular that I'm thinking of, Fletcher had a nice run off of the C gap, off of the left tackle's hip. I believe he got a first down on it, super physical run. We didn't have a ton of big runs on the interior because they were really mugging and muddying up those gaps. Really, to me, it looked like they thought they could stop our receivers with their corners, and they were wrong.
Pete, by the way, you said the exact same thing in one of the post games, that you thought that we could have done a little more attacking their edges in this game. But just,
and I think they will. I think that's something we're going to see more of, the wide zone be utilized more.
But just fast forward ACC play. I mean, isn't this going to be the same thing every week? Because it's not like there's a team in the ACC. There used to be you'll play at NC State and they'll have 2 or 3 defensive linemen that are going to the NFL in the past, right? Yep. You would run into teams like that. You'd be like, okay, well, this team's got a good front. This team has a good second. I'm not sure any team in the ACC, as it stands now, with the way the portal's been pulling players out, with the way recruiting has been going, I don't think there's a single team in the ACC that can stop our running game or even realistically compete with it playing straight up. I know you haven't scouted the entire ACC, and I haven't either, but just feels like that. Is this just kind of who we're going to be going forward in terms of how we have to attack teams?
Yeah. So the way that teams will attack moving forward, in my opinion, is by playing some more of those games up front, right? Where they do loopers and stunts and X cross and mugging the gaps and kind of backing out a little bit. You're right. Teams are not going to try and line up, 5-on-4 and just get home with 4, stop the run with 4 against our offensive line. It's too good. And in the ACC, they just don't have the talent to do it. You will see some of these teams that have some lighter, smaller fronts try and use that quickness just a little bit and shoot gaps. In fact, even in this game, Florida State did it a couple of times where they used, X stunts, some loopers, things along those lines. We had miscommunications. One notable one that I highlighted in the article is Inez Cooper. He steps down and they had a looper come through. I believe it was number 20 that really kind of also crossed in. I thought again, Florida State, I thought they were well coached on the defensive line as well to use techniques to, amplify their ability to get home. I didn't think they were especially talented on the defensive line, but they really used hooks and holds and slants and stunts to really get into the body and kind of prevent offensive linemen from getting down, doing those things. I think you're going to see more of those games, especially after Florida State showed that it could work several times against us in this game. I think that tactic will really work. I think what you're going to just continue to see, though, is Miami is just more talented than these teams. So to beat them, Miami is really going to have to help you. They're going to have to help you with turnovers. They're going to have to help you with penalties, which we continue to see, by the way. That's definitely an area of growth for this particular team right now. And then I think the other thing is I really believe they're going to need to have a little bit more of a killer instinct late in the games.
Yeah, so Lorenzo's bringing some of this similar points up as far as the games. Now, the flip side is, and people always ask, at least on this show, they're always asking, why do we have such tight splits? Why do we have such tight splits? Well, listen, all those games and stuff, it's hard to do when this team, we're so tight together. We are ourselves are not moving that much, opening up these huge gaps, and they're all 320 plus pounds. So it's like, people ask, why do you have tight splits? You're describing how you might try to attack Miami, given the talent's advantage, but at the same time,
they're not giving you much leeway.
Not much room to get into.
Yeah, so the best way that I can like kind of describe the reason for doing that is think of it as a conservative investor. So you've got a conservative investor who's really just trying to get those minimal gains each day, right? You're trying to get those 3-5 yard, runs to where you're always ahead of the chains, is what they call it, right? They have running backs right now who fall forward, right? I mean, I just absolutely love watching Brown run and Fletcher run. It looks like it's going to be a 3-yard run and it ends up a 5-yard run. And those are demoralizing for a defense. To never be able to get Miami behind the chains is kind of the goal with those tight splits. It's to never lose money on investments, to not have like the wild up and down to where you hit a 30-yard run and then you get a -5 run, right? Well, that -5
taking a profit.
Yeah, that -5 has a bigger impact on your percentages of scoring than the 30-yard run increases it, right? I mean, I know that doesn't make total sense, but the reason why is if you get a -5-yard run on second down, right, and you get into like a 3rd and 11 or 3rd and 12, those are very low percentage pickups, right? Where if you get a 30-yard run, it just starts over, right? You now have a 1st and 10, right? And then you can get a 30-yard and then a -5 and have a lower percentage of scoring than if you just get 5, positives. And so that's absolutely the reason they do that. The other is it's an air raid staple, right? You're going to have 2 types of air raids. You're going to have the wild Mike Leach type where it has like major splits. And the purpose of that is to get space. And then they use like little swing passes and screens and things like that. That may as well be their run game, right? You may go games where they don't even run the ball 12 times, against an offense like that. But then you also have the air raids where you want to get those tight splits. You want to make sure that you condense things for your quarterback to have the ability to get it out in 3 seconds. And then you're hitting a lot of those like just floods and layers and mesh concepts that the air raid's getting you. So, it's like anything else, right? If there wasn't a trade-off, everyone would do it, right? But there is a trade-off in the fact that you're going to have more muddied running lanes. You're going to have more individuals in there. It's probably going to reduce your explosive run rate. You're probably going to hit fewer like 30-yard runs, 60-yard runs out of this. But like you said, you can't go broke making a profit. And this particular team has an offensive line to always make a profit.
Yeah, it's like you talk about muddy and all that. If you're bigger, it's fine because you just push. I mean, that's what we're doing right now. And you're going to bring in a guy, Jackson Cantwell, next year from your neck of the woods, who's probably the strongest pusher I've ever seen in my life. Yeah. It's like he doesn't even block people, just pushes them because his hands are so powerful with his elite shot put and chest. Not to get ahead, but I'm just saying this is kind of like Marty Brown. He runs this. Marty Brown doesn't really live in the open field. I mean, he lives in these kind of situations. So it's like if you recruit to this scheme, and you're bigger and tougher, and your mentality is always pushing the pile and always hitting it, and it all lines up with the personnel and the scheme. You end up having a high yards per carry, which we've had really the last few years, and you're not losing yards, so it works out. Joel Warren says, "I feel smarter after listening to Lance. About to call my broker." My guy Joel, love it. P, I know what jumped out to you and you want to ask Lance about, because we've broken this game down so many different ways, but it's like it feels like
I would really say, I guess, Carson Beck in particular, Lance. So we talked about him a lot after USF. I believe it was just me on that show. We were talking about him a lot, but he looked phenomenal the other night.
Yeah, this was his best game of the year. In fact, we left some out there, in either drops or maybe just, a half a step away. Or I think the first drive of the game, he threw just an absolute perfect throw to Tony that went through his hands. I think I highlighted that one. His first touchdown to Tony, the 44-yarder, I believe, after the interception. I mean, he couldn't have walked down there and handed it to him any better. Hits Daniel on a perfect throw as well. I thought he was also just in control, right? I thought that, he really navigated that environment well, and just kind of he was into it from an emotional standpoint as well. I vividly remember when he came here, people talking about, he's a social media guy. He doesn't care about football. He's not a football guy, right? He's out there shooting arrows, counting to 4 when he gets the 4th touchdown pass, falling down, just enjoying things as well. I thought this was the healthiest he looked as well. His arm to me looked live. He made a couple of throws, without a strong base that had velocity on them. To me, if I'm an NFL team, I'm wanting to see where this goes, because this film right here was his best of the year to me.
Yeah, so for one quarterback who has beaten Florida State and Notre Dame in the same season, and Carson Beck, to another in Malik Rozier, he says he hates condensed formations unless it's a set of pass plays. We're talking about, just getting tight. He says it adds free hitters to the box, come from outside. Play more spread, creates more one-on-one blocks for your elite OL. I know, Malik's best team in 2017, that was a lot of explosive runs, both by you, Malik, and Travis Homer, man. I feel like he hit a bunch that year, some big ones. Shout out to Junior as he walks in here. So it's interesting you say that, because I'm just thinking back to that 2017 team, and there were a lot of big runs that season, probably more than we've seen this season.
Yeah, Malik's, first off, love Malik, and he brought us and gave us some great memories of that team, and just love the way he played and his heart. He's not wrong in the fact that, it does bring in, it brings in more defenders. It muddies things up. It also allows the defense to have more ways to, send rushers that may not be identified, get some more hits. I go back to the fact that the intention of doing that is to stay on schedule, right? That team had more explosives, but it also had more negative runs. I think if you went and looked at the percentage, I don't have them memorized, but I think if you went and looked back, you'd probably see there were a lot more tackles for loss, negative runs, sacks, things along those lines, playing that style. And, it's a little bit more of a gambler style, a little bit more of a risk reward style. And, we can definitely love it or not, but a coach is not going to change his spots at this point. And I think that Mario is going to tend to be a more conservative, game plan coach. So.
Yeah, and I think shout out to Junior here, throwing up the U, running the show out here in Duffy's Tavern. Yeah, no, I think too, it's like if we try to run this type of offense in 2017, it wouldn't have worked, because Travis, as tough as Travis Homer, he hits it hard, but he wasn't the biggest guy. And our offensive line wasn't as big and powerful as this one. Oh, we got a special guest here. I see him right here. We got an older Josh Darrow as I look at a younger Josh Darrow here, because he's got his picture up here at Duffy's Tavern. But those are the kind of people that roll through here in the home of the Hurricanes, in Duffy's Tavern. So, Lance, before we let you go, just again, any big picture takeaways that you're getting from this one? You broke it down. You got to read the article if you haven't. CanesInSight.com upon further reviews. There's too much to get there on one show, but just a big picture takeaway as we leave that game, head into the ACC schedule. Now that you've really dove in and seen this team on a snap by snap basis, rewinding and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think there's a few big takeaways from where we're at this point, right? Most talented team in 20 plus years for Miami, overall top to bottom. They do not at this point have any holes if they stay healthy. I think they're a top 4 team. I think what makes me so excited is I believe they're a top 4 team, and I don't believe they've played a great game to this point. Not a full 4-quarter great game. I think they've either had penalties or kind of gotten a little lackadaisical or maybe overly conservative in the 4th quarter of this game. I didn't want to relive the 4th quarter in this game, so I didn't do a lot on it, to be quite honest with you. I feel like they also, have the ability to, right now, points per drive, they're 36th in the country. Drive success rate, they're 50th. Offensive available yards, they're 55th. I think there's still some opportunities there to get a little more efficient, clean up some of those pre-snap penalties. I talked a little bit earlier about, getting a -5 yard run. A penalty is not quite as negative because you get to keep the down, but it does kind of reduce those percentages accordingly as well. When you get those, 5 yards, you go from a 3rd and 1 to a 3rd and 6. That's like one of the biggest, negatives you can have as an offense. And we've done that, I believe, 6 times this year, which is, not good, right? So cleaning that up will definitely be an opportunity to go. And you're really talking about the margins here, right? So the other thing that you can really see from Miami is you can see them improve their touchdown percentage in the red zone. Right now, they're good. And you really need to get to elite to kind of like just squeeze that extra margin between the difference between, getting to the Final Four and maybe winning a national title. So,
Lance, they can find you at Hurricane Vision on Twitter, on CanesInSight. By the way, if you like these segments, you want more, Lance, which we all do, want to sponsor the show, reach out to us, CanesInsight@gmail.com. You sponsor Lance's segment. We'll get him on here more often because he is the absolute best. Lance, man, appreciate you. Thank you. And go Canes.
Yeah, go Canes.
Canes. Thank you, Lance.
Joe Warren said you're a wee bit quiet today. I'm talking a lot. So.
I mean, listen, I'm not going to make any allegations. There's been a couple of times that D told me to ask the next question, and he goes and asks it. So
it's hard to communicate in this angle. Usually we could kind of do the nonverbal communication. We can do the Beck and Malachi Tony kind of eye communication. It's hard in this setup when we can't look at each other. Here we go. Malik's asking, I think we blow out every team on our schedule. Any sleepers we play? Malik, to me, this Louisville game, Friday games were always weird. They got some good players on Louisville to me in terms of.
Go ahead. Sorry.
And you can jump in, and I'll let you jump in this time. Chris Bell, NFL player, receiver, 220-plus pound guy with speed. That's someone to watch. Lacey can house it on kickoffs and with the ball in his hands on offense. So they got Isaac Brown, the running back from Homestead. I believe he was the ACC Rookie of the Year on offense last year. So you're talking about they got guys that can score from 70 out. Plus they're, at least on paper, the best pass rushers that Miami's played this year. Size-wise, they're not the biggest, but they've been very productive. So if your pass rush gets going with some speed guys, you could disrupt a couple drives. So LSU, I just think from a big play pass rush perspective, Louisville, from a big play pass rush perspective, I think they could do some stuff. Pete, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think we're maybe throwing SMU to the curb a little bit. They have not looked great this year, but at the same time, I'm a big believer in Rhett Lashley's ability to game plan. We talk a lot about Brahm's ability to game plan. And I'm not a huge Jennings guy. They don't have the same playmakers there, but I still think that we're looking ahead there a little bit. That atmosphere should be pretty good. I think there's going to be a good amount of Canes fans on the road for that one as well. So I think we will travel well for that one. But I think SMU, we are kind of penciling that one in as a win right now. And I think they'll steady their season up here a bit here, D.
Yeah, I think they got their offense obviously is tricky, so that gives you some concerns. Daniel Rhodes said, when I was an undergrad at UM, I went to Duffy's at midnight on my 21st birthday. This was 2001. I always went out, my 21st birthday, I went out my 21st birthday. I didn't think about that. If you go out midnight, you can start buying drinks at midnight. I never do that. I didn't do that. Where was your 21st birthday at?
I don't remember, so that's probably a good thing.
You're probably reporting on CanesInSight, breaking some scoops. Bill K saying every team's had a stinker. I've been the coward because I've been picking that we were going to have that tough game against Florida State, just because a rivalry game. If we're going to have that game and be against one of those teams, but I underestimated how bad our opponents were and how locked in this team was. Hopefully, you know what's going to happen, but hopefully it comes in a game where the talent gap is so wide that it doesn't actually, make a difference.
I think that's what you're looking at here, is that SMU probably just going to be pretty overmatched. But when I look at these tricky games, it's not necessarily games that they'll lose, right? Yeah. I'm talking about games that they're going to put a scare in you in a way that maybe you didn't want to, like that Cal game last year, right?
Yeah. Which now we know that a lot of those guys got drafted on defense. Mendoza is going to be a high pick, so probably more talent there than we thought going into that game. So we don't know maybe how talented some of these teams are yet. I know Pitt's got 2 linebackers that are very fast. They're going to be all ACC, All-America candidates. Joel Warren saying 13-5 is the early line for Louisville, pretty strong. Atlas Perez asking, are the Miami Beach Bulldogs going D1 or just playing for fun? They're working. They're trying to coalesce. They're 5-4 at the moment. Tough loss last game. We're trying to in Little League, they got a clock. So you play the innings, then there's a clock. So sometimes you got to work the clock to try to get the other inning to start before the clock runs out so you can get an extra inning. Because once the inning starts, the clock doesn't matter. So if you can squeeze an inning in before the clock starts, you play more. So my son was the second pitcher. He was pitching good. He was throwing strikes, but he was like Mark Buehrle on cocaine. If you ever saw Mark Buehrle back in the day, because he was pitching so fast, trying to get in the clock. So he'd pitch, get ready, pitch, get ready. It was a very frenetic pace to the end of that game. Eventually,
it's quite the way to describe your son.
That's the pace of play. If anyone saw Mark Buehrle, you know what I'm talking about.
He
was
said Mark
flying
Buehrle on cocaine
because he had to speed it up even more. And he was throwing strikes, man. He's pitching pretty good. But yeah, the clock ran out on us, or else I think we would have come back and gotten that one. So we'll see. Dobson, question on Dobson. So Pete, I don't know what your thoughts are. Let's pull up his film.
I think he's a phenomenal prospect. Great size on him, really good ball skills. We'll see. It's gonna be a tough one to hold on to. D. I think Miami's felt like that was gonna be a battle for a while there.
Yeah, and you said I remember hearing from talking to people that Dobson was, his sophomore year, people said, hey, he's very talented but up and down. And then I remember you telling me, like, man, have you watched this guy's junior film? This guy's balling.
Which is now his senior film.
Right? Yeah. So you're exactly right. I mean, this guy's super talented. And then let's pull up his film right now so you guys can see for yourselves. I mean, length, speed, ball skills. This is a guy that I think is definitely somebody. We talk about traits at this position. I think this is a position where you want traits. Norland, you recognize that helmet. That's Duke Johnson. That's Eric Flowers. I think of Xavier Rhodes, who went to FSU at corner and played in the pros, went to Pro Bowls, I believe, with Indianapolis Colts. But he was a really good player in the pros. This guy's got it all, man. You see the size. You see him taking these to the house. I mean, this is not Mickey Mouse competition in South Florida. He's going against some real teams. So I like what
I will say,
I
mean, maybe this thing goes – we're about a year removed now from when Malachi Toney reclassed and decommitted. And remind you, there was a lot of people who were saying, hey, let him go to Alabama. It's not worth it if he wants to do this and that, right? I wonder if now that he's officially reclassified here, if Miami says, hey, let's make sure we keep this guy in the class. I think they were waiting for this to officially happen. I know a lot of people are in the comments because he's officially visited UNC here, and a lot of people are saying there's no way he should go to UNC, and I understand that. I don't know that it's UNC. I think that when a kid reclassifies, the recruitment almost starts over in a sense, and that's not necessarily the case 100% here. But I think there's a bit of a reset button. So I wouldn't be surprised to see other schools emerge here.
Yeah, his tackling is off the charts. It's just funny. I mean, I remember we had Dobson Sr. Jump on the show. He's like, man, whoever told you this kid was not productive was out of their minds. And again, the more you watch this guy, I mean, you'd see the size.
Well, you know they want another corner in this class, D. We've talked about it recently. I think another corner, another safety is likely to be added to the class. So you already have this guy kind of in the fold. Why not push to make it happen? But he's a heck of a player. So you're going to see some other schools come into the mix here. And I think you see, like, last year, for example, Jahari Flowers, when he reclassed, there were some programs like there was Syracuse got into the mix there, for example, Arizona State. So I think there's going to be some programs that say, man, this guy could be a difference maker for us next year. Let's do everything, which I think UNC kind of was feeling that way too, and probably still feels that way. But we'll see what happens there. But
and he could do it for the Canes, I mean, next year potentially. I mean, there's no reason why we Malachi Toney.
That's what I'm saying. The Malachi thing. Remember, let's if we go back from a year ago, like there were a lot of people in the comments who said, "Hey, he decommitted. He looks like he wants to because he went and visited Bama, right? Mm-hmm. When he reopened his process, and some people were saying, "Hey, should we do everything we can to keep this guy, or should we let him walk?" And obviously, you do everything you can and more.
Yeah, and you watch Dobson here. I mean, look at this. This is a return against Coco. I mean, this is the fact that he's playing returner against a team like Coco, one of the top programs in the country. Here you see him playing safety, getting downhill, making a tackle. Where is he right now? He's going to probably do what's going to chase this guy down. He delivers strikes, man. He's not afraid, and the size is absolutely there. So, yeah, just a lot to like with this guy. I think. Again, I am admitting that I whatever information, whoever told me this guy was up and down, I don't see it. I see a guy that with the traits, with the speed, with everything else to merit his ranking, which he's one of the highest ranked players in the country, and somebody that all the top teams are after, and the Miami is after and trying like heck to hold on to.
A lot of questions here about Milan Paris, who officially decommitted from Iowa State D. And I told you over the weekend, I think that's going to be a tough one as he continues to get a lot more buzz here, visiting Oregon. But I know Miami has felt like they had some good momentum there.
Yeah, so. That's an open process. I think he hasn't visited, so right, you got to get him to visit to even be in the game. But he's someone to test off the charts, speed. I'm a huge Milan Paris fan. I think Miami really wants to just add players. And that sounds like they want to add receivers. They want to add guys that can play because, I mean, you look, these freshmen play. They help you right away. Not all of them, but
and you're going to lose guys. You're going to lose some veterans. You're going to lose some guys who are on the roster now to the portal. That's just what the game is. And you're going to probably have to replace 5 receivers there, D.
That's
at the minimum, maybe 6. So
I would love to, and these guys can help you early. I mean, Josh Moore helped you win that USF game. Malachi Tony's helped you win every game. So, I mean, these are players that potentially could help. You don't know who's going to be who necessarily, but certainly a Samorian Wingo could potentially help you. Milan Paris could help you. You don't really know until you get him.
Marquez Daniel is another one who has the height, weight, speed sort of thing you're looking for. So
Vance Spafford, if he, were able to stay healthy, because his speed, I think, is a big difference maker, something maybe we don't have on this roster, at that level. So we'll see. Elo says, I'm told Malachi Tony had his hamstrings rubbed with croquetas the night before from Islas. That's how he was so fluid. I'd not tried that technique, but certainly you want to feel good. You know what, Pete? This might be a dinner plan we got to make here, because I got to get out to Islas again. It's been a while. We'll get some lunch. We're right here in Duffy's. We got some great lunch here. But if you're out there down south, want to go to the Dayland Pavilion, right there in the center of town, next to everything, right off the metro, you name it. Islas Canarias Cuban Express, 7 different types of croquetas, all kinds of sandwiches, the cubarito you can grab and go, loaded fries, the old and the new, all the classic Cuban items that you heard about, you hear Mario talk about, you hear on TV, or that you just have had growing up. They got them all right here at Islas Canarias Cuban Express, plus new stuff, right? So if you had Cuban food your whole life and you want to switch it up, you want things that are convenient to grab and go, they got that too. Kimchi croqueta, who else has that kind of thing? So you can go traditional, you could go new. You got coffee, you got juices, you got everything you need. Islas Canarias Cuban Express. So, but I don't know if rubbing your hamstrings makes you faster. We'll have to find that one out. Dizzy Dancy, go get Wingo from Texas or Coleman from Auburn. Those guys are in hell. Those Auburn receivers. I hadn't thought about that, Dizzy, because
Coleman,
I thought Singleton, for example, Singleton visited Miami last year. I thought he would have been a perfect fit. Go to Miami, have a great year, go pro. I mean, I don't know. Can Singleton even go pro right now? Let me pull up his numbers. Eric Singleton, as we get to Tampa mode, my favorite part of the show. Eric Singleton, his numbers actually not that bad. 265 touchdowns, but 9.8 yards a catch, long on 37. That's not really him.
He's fine. I mean,
6 carries.
I agree. The yards per catch isn't great. But he has almost 30 catches this year. He's getting.
Yeah, but they're short ones. 9.8 yards per catch is not. I mean, Restrepo
he'll go pro though. I don't see him sticking around another year.
I'm just saying he's getting paid a lot this year. He has money. He'd get paid a lot next year. Just to use an example of Restrepo. Restrepo had Coleman has 9. Not Coleman. Singleton has 9.8 this year, running 4.3. Restrepo running 4.8, average 16 yards a catch last year. So, again, stats aren't everything. It's just going to depend on where Coleman gets situated. But look, when I hear about first-round receivers, I hear about Jordan Tyson from Arizona State, and I think that's a pretty fair guy to put in that category. Carnell Tate, you hear about him from Ohio State. I think he's a pretty fair guy to put in that category. I don't hear a lot of Singleton in the first round kind of buzz.
I think he's a tester, though. I think once he runs, teams will say, "Well, let's get that speed in our offense."
Coleman not draft eligible. So if we're switching it to Coleman not draft eligible,
Coleman I could see.
He's from Alabama, high school teammate of Dalen Upshaw, who I think I would love to see as we get more in the season go forward and see just more of those guys get reps, like young guys that are going to help you in the playoffs and then next year. Dalen Upshaw to me is one that I really love to see.
Yeah, I mean, DZ didn't say that our offense would have been different when Singleton would have short side assistant. To the kid's defense, he legitimately had no idea who the quarterback was going to be here. Yeah. I mean, I don't blame him for the decision at that time. It's tough to say and tell like, hey, you got to put your future in our belief that we're going to land this quarterback that I don't know for sure is going to happen. So.
Yeah. And Atlanta, Auburn, they're close together. So like the Auburn always gets a lot of Atlanta kids. He's from Atlanta. So I think that all played a part. But yeah, he would have helped. Anyone in your eye in tampering receiver mode?
Yeah, Dallas Wilson.
He's already transferred once, right? I mean, the guy transferred from Oregon after signing day to UF. So who knows what happens there? That's going to be an interesting situation to watch UF, how that season goes, because they're 7.5 point dog against Texas A&M. I think they're going to be a very live dog in that game. I actually picked them to cover, but if they lose that game, this thing could turn around just like it's turning good. It could turn around just as fast. And of course, Napier is very tied to Lagway. Who knows how this whole thing's going to play out? That's a situation to monitor. I think we also have homegrown receivers with Malley, with Josh Moore. Upshaw, we mentioned, is Trader going to get going? A guy like Chance Robinson going to get going? Ray, like, are any of these guys going to emerge? We'll find out over the course of the year. Some folks that already emerged, and I was with them yesterday. This guy was sitting in the suite, the nice little air-conditioned suite to watch practice. This is how good you're balling when you're in the suite to watch practice, and that is OrchidMan, ORCHID man. Saw him at the light as we watched the Miami baseball scrimmage, which we'll get to because I'm gonna catch 2 scrimmages, and then I'm gonna report back with the baseball show with Sebastian Font and maybe some more special guests that were there, including maybe the Orchid Man himself who's been to these practices. Landscape artisans, you already know what it is, from Palm Beach all the way down to the Keys. If you're looking for the top landscape artisans in the region, it's Orchid Man, ORCHID man, Florida.com. The pretty stuff, all these beautiful flowers, he's got that going, but he also does the dirty work. Sprinkler repair, manicured maintenance, tree trimming, tree removal, tree stump grinding, fertilizing, hurricane prep, you name it. Orchid Man, ORCHID man, Florida.com.
Wanted to get one thing in here too, D. Shout out to Lomello's Meat Market, Wagyu beef delivery nationwide, right to your door. If you're local here in Miami, 9810 South Dixie Highway, about 5 minutes, 10 minutes from campus. And you see the beautiful marbling here on these Wagyu steaks. And if you don't want to splurge on the Wagyu, you got the prime options as well, top of the line cuts. You see the skirt steak here, the Denver steak, one of my favorites. You got the fillets, New York strip, ribeye. You got it all for tailgate season, or if you're just grilling up at home, promo code CIS10 for 10% off your order, lomellos.com.
Joel Warren says, we look like young mobsters sitting in a restaurant booth right before getting whacked by Corleone, kind of like Goodfellas when they're scanning around. It's that old school diner feel with the new school amenities. Shout out to everybody here at Duffy's Tavern. Lord Baconton says, if we're going QB shopping for next year, that should be the first domino to fall. That's the ideal situation, right? You get that sorted out quick, but it's so hard to predict.
Remember, a lot of people last year were saying, hey, now this is 2 years in a row that Miami's taking their time to figure out a quarterback. If you go back and look at the timeline with Cam Ward, they had him visiting the second week of December. So they tried to get that one done right away. Carson Beck was obviously a unique situation with his injury. Was he going to go pro? Was he going to stay at Georgia? So the timing there was weird as well. It's unfortunately at that position, you can't always have it on your own timeline. But they try with Ward, they certainly tried to. And then remember, he pushed it back a month after that. It didn't help with some things, as we now know, looking back on it. But I would love to say they've learned from mistakes, but It's not like they wanted to go that long the last 2 years.
And it's not a mistake.
Yeah,
at the end of the day.
exactly.
I mean, you're
It's
battling
worked
the
out,
NFL. With Cam Ward and Carson Beck, you're battling the NFL, right? You're not battling Appalachian State. And I think if you look at the history of Miami quarterbacks, certainly Pete's whole life, really my whole life, as far as when I've been paying attention to football and been old enough. So Steve Walsh was a supplemental pick, first-round pick, kind of an inside deal with Jimmy Johnson. Maybe if Steve was around, he'd probably break down that process more. But I don't know if he was like a true first-round pick. Certainly didn't, he was performed more like a college guy once he got to the pros. But, one of the best ever. He's pictures on the wall out here. Steve Walsh. My dad still says the best quarterback ever at Miami. But first-round pick, that was the last one. That was 1989. No, 1988. That was Steve Walsh's last year. I got to look it up. This is a Kim question. But anyways, a long time ago. You had a first overall pick in Cam Ward and Carson Beck trending to be the next highest ranked player, next highest pick of quarterbacks. So if you have a system that has delivered the best, most talented quarterbacks you've had in 30 plus years back to back, it's probably a pretty good system, even if it hurts you with a receiver here and there, right? I mean, ultimately, we were killing ourselves to get first round type quarterbacks, and now you got them back to back. So, and I mean, really, you could have had Mendoza, who was going to be a first round pick too. You finished second from a tier, or at least you weren't in there from a tier. You tried to get a tier, but I think Ward, you didn't want to follow him. Maybe if it was a different situation, it could have worked out. But you're in the boat with the guys you want to be in the boat with, I think, with this type of system. Is that fair to say, Pete?
Yeah, without a doubt.
Of course, we are back-to-back state champs. This is a state championship podcast, and you want to get the hat or the shirt to show what's it all about. Right there, MiamiHGS.com, or the team store located across the street from the Thesis Hotel. There's the back-to-back state champ shirt. You got the scores. You got the whole deal. You got the state. Promo code INSIGHT20. You get 20% off your first item, including this shirt. INSIGHT20. You do it online, MiamiHGS.com. You can do it in person at the store, at the Thesis Hotel. Get that shirt. Let everybody know who the champs of the state are with the Miami Hurricanes back-to-back state champs, Miami Hurricane team store. So, Pete,
last thing here I wanted to bring up to you, and then we'll wrap it up. Nick Isaac said, if you had to guess, do we finish in the top 7 in recruiting? If we don't, the whole narrative that on the field results matter is thrown out the window. I disagree with that completely, because I think, first of all, yes, they do have a good chance, solid chance to finish in the top 7. We actually ran the numbers here. I did a solo show a couple of weeks ago, and I was talking about potential flips, and Johnny Lagoon had ran the numbers on 247. And I mean, the flips that I had said, just in a hypothetical world, were Calvin Russell, one of Tank Jones, Nolan Wilson, Bryce Perry Wright, one of those in the realm of those 5-star defensive linemen, Justice Fitzpatrick, for example. I think we had like 4 flips of Frederick Saintis at that time as well. And that got you into the top 7. And I think those are all realistic, sort of flips. That's not counting a Derek Cooper that I'm not completely saying is dead either. That's not counting a Grant Wise, who I think Miami would love to have in the class. So, yeah, and I don't think any of that is possible without Miami having the season they're having right now. So that's my answer to the question, D.
What I would love to see, I agree with you, Pete, totally. And
none of these kids, if they aren't 5-0 right now, if they're 3-2, 2-3, if they're 4-1, who knows? But if all of those flips are on the table because of the season Miami is having. I strongly believe it.
And I think the key to me, first of all, we got to keep our guys. So this is having success allows you to keep your guys. It keeps the barbarians away from the gate when it comes to like a Jackson Cantwell, number 1 player in the country, Samori Wingo, who's rising. But beyond all that stuff, in terms of adding guys, I am laser focused. And Pete, I know you are too.
On the guys in the class.
Not just that, but saying in terms of flipping guys to us, we're laser focused on the Tank Jones, the Bryce Perry Wright. I think what we've learned here is you got to have, and we knew it all along, but you're seeing it in action. College football is about defensive line more than any other position. Offensive line helps a lot too, as we learned. But to me, defensive line really is the name of the game in college football. So separates the best teams from the rest Go across the board. Go back to when we last won our national championship. Look at the teams that won. You'll see teams with great quarterbacks. You'll see teams with not so great quarterbacks. Most of the teams could run, but they didn't all have first round. They didn't have first round picks everywhere. Some of them had first round receivers. Some of them didn't. They all had those dudes up front, defensive line wise, consistently. Look at Michigan when they won, running. They threw the ball 9 times a game. They had Mason Graham. They had Kenneth Grant. You got to be able to win up front. 4 guys, and that's about recruiting. It's about landing these primo guys out of high school because they're very easy to evaluate. Generally, when it comes to defensive linemen, the best ones are 5 stars. So Anthony Jones, Bryce Perry, right, that kind of guy, that to me is a story of this recruiting class and the close. But it's not all it is. There's going to be more.
I got I thought of one more portal guy here, D.
Give it to us.
DJ Pickett.
Ooh. Ooh, Pete. I like how you're thinking. First round pick, 1,500 on live for Pete to drop that scorching idea right there.
It's an idea. There's no
I like it. Though. We're
info.
speaking into existence. So we got over 1,500 on. Like and subscribe to the show. Almost 2 hours. We're going longer and longer, man, just because we got more to talk about, man. We're the number 1 team in the country, so we're rolling. Oh, Lord Baconton. Hear ye. Says those big bodies are difference makers. D-line have a higher hit rate than any other position. Listen, if you look at the NFL, there's Aaron Donald's retired. J.J. Watt's retired. Pretty much everybody else, you're talking about guys that are highly rated, highly coveted. Jeffrey Simmons, Chris Jones, Myles Garrett, not hard to spot. These guys are the best players. You see them, you know that they are the guys. So you just got to get them. And we'll be covering all that recruiting. You can check Pete out with the work Discord. Obviously, like and subscribe to this show. We are doing this thing every single day. Check out all of our sponsors. You'll be eating good. You'll be living good. And we appreciate all the support. And yeah, man. Junior, get over here. Right here. Number 2 basketball coach. Get him on the camera. Number 2 basketball coach in Miami now that Jay Lucas came to town with Moran. But how we doing? Got to duck to get in the shot, man. Make me feel small.
Well, leave it to me to be the biggest guy in town to buy a small restaurant like this.
Hey, man, listen, people rolling in. We already got people rolling in. It's not even noon yet.
They're on the board of directors. These guys.
There it is. Yes. How are we feeling about just being in such an iconic establishment and getting that feeling back while still moving it forward?
Listen, that's really been our prime focus with Duffy's Tavern to make sure that we could preserve some South Florida history and make this a place that the next generation can enjoy. Obviously, we've had to make a few operational and technology changes to position it so that this place can survive another round here, another generation.
And Junior, real quick, Canes basketball. You were a college basketball player. You're a coach. You know all these guys. You're in the basketball community. What do you see from Canes Hoops bringing in a guy like Jay Lucas, bringing in Moran, bringing in some of these big bodies?
I'll tell you, I've also been a season ticket holder for about 20 years, and we are tickled. We're tickled to death that we're super excited with the group that they've put together. I know that from day one that he arrived, I remember him walking around campus with 2 and 3 cell phones on the phone, beating the pavement. And I think they've assembled a nice group of kids, and we're really excited. We're really excited to see what they could pose for the future. And yeah, Andrew's a great guy. He knows that a lot of great technicalities with basketball, and he could really help this team gel and improve. Joel
Warren saying the big fella could post up D money all day long. Yeah, that's for sure, man. I don't want to be in that position. But listen, it's the home of the Hurricanes. That doesn't mean home of Hurricanes football. It means home of Hurricanes football, home of Hurricanes basketball, home of Hurricanes baseball. I mean, we are right here. You want to get a pregame before you go to a game at the SCO or at the Light. This is the place to be, right? This is the home of the Hurricanes, period.
We're keeping the tradition alive, as Wayne Russell would used to say when everyone would walk in here, welcome home, and this is home.
Wayne the Pain, still rocking it, still holding it down. Junior, taking it to a whole nother level. We appreciate you.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you, man. Remember to like and subscribe to the show. Go Canes.
Go Canes.